The most dangerous poisons do not taste bitter. They taste like your favorite vintage of wine. They slide down easily, warming your blood until the paralysis sets in. That is the exact anatomy of a relationship with a clinical narcissist. They do not arrive with horns and pitchforks. They arrive with apology cards left on your windshield, tearful voicemails begging for a second chance, and a mirror that perfectly reflects everything you ever wanted to see in a partner. But what happens when the mask slips? What happens when the illusion shatters and the monster tries to use the heavy machinery of the justice system to crush you? They say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. But they haven't seen a woman who kept the receipts. The architecture of Vance's deceit was a masterpiece. When we first met, he was the charismatic, deeply empathetic physical therapist who seemed to understand my soul before I even spoke. But the golden hour of our relationship was brief. Soon, the shadows crept in unexplained absences, volatile mood swings, and a constant, dizzying spin of reality where my entirely valid concerns were twisted into accusations of paranoia. I ended it. For 2 weeks, my world was flooded with his desperation. Handwritten letters detailing his profound epiphanies, long text messages dissecting his flaws, and tears that felt so raw they could have dissolved stone. Exhausted and thoroughly manipulated, I let him back in. The honeymoon relapse lasted precisely a month before the old rot surfaced. This time, I didn't argue. I offered a cold, non-negotiable ultimatum. He would start intensive personal therapy, and right here, in the center of my living room, he would hand over his unlocked phone. He agreed to the therapy without missing a beat. But when my palm opened, waiting for the device, the temperature in the room plummeted. A microscopic twitch tightened his jaw. He stalled, his thumb flying across the screen, frantically attempting to covertly delete digital footprints. I snatched the device from his grip, turned on my heel, and locked myself inside my home office, leaving him pacing like a caged animal in the hallway. The glowing screen was a graveyard of betrayals. I didn't just skim. I excavated. I scrolled past the sanitized inbox and dug into the hidden folders, the archived messages, the encrypted dating apps. It was a forensic dissection of a double life. There were messages dating back to the very first week of our relationship. The most damning thread was with a woman named Corrine. Corrine wasn't just a random swipe on an app, she was his patient. Between messages detailing her rotator cuff rehabilitation, there were explicit photographs, hotel room numbers, and mocking jokes about how clueless I was. I felt a cold, metallic calm wash over me. I didn't cry. I quietly airdropped a mountain of screenshots to my own device, compiling an irrefutable dossier of his depravity. When I unlocked the door and stepped back into the living room, I didn't yell. I simply told him it was over forever and to get out. The absolute lack of emotion in my voice must have terrified him because the charismatic healer vanished, replaced by something violent and feral. He lunged. Before I could process the movement, his arm hooked around my neck, his forearm pressing against my windpipe as he desperately tried to pry his phone from my rigid grip. The air left my lungs in a sharp hiss. I thrashed backward, driving my elbow into his ribs, shattering a ceramic vase against the hardwood floor in the chaotic struggle. He wasn't trying to kill me, but the sheer, reckless force of his panic left me deeply rattled. I finally managed to hurl his phone across the room. He scrambled for it like a starved dog, and I used the opportunity to force him out the front door, slamming the deadbolt home. I thought the nightmare was over. I was wrong. 3 days later, a man in a beige trench coat approached me outside my corporate wealth management firm, shoved a manila envelope into my chest, and walked away. It was a subpoena, a summons for a protective order hearing. As I scanned the legal jargon, my blood turned to ice. Vance had marched into a courthouse, weaponized his pristine, healthcare professional persona, and swore under oath that I had stolen his property and violently assaulted him. The judge had granted a temporary protective order against me. Worse, he had filed a criminal assault charge. In my heavily regulated industry, a violent criminal conviction wouldn't just be an embarrassment, it would trigger an automatic termination of my licenses. My lucrative, painstakingly built career was standing on the edge of a cliff. He knew exactly where to strike to ruin me, but Vance had severely underestimated the woman he was dealing with. He thought his gaslighting had made me weak. In reality, it had made me meticulous. For the last 6 months of our relationship, I had felt so entirely disconnected from reality by his constant lies that I began secretly recording our arguments on my smartwatch, just to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. I had a digital vault of high-definition audio. I had time-stamped photographs of my bruised neck and the shattered ceramic vase in my apartment. And most importantly, I had the undeniable screenshots of his predatory relationship with his patient. I didn't just hire a lawyer, I built an empire of ruin. I purchased a thick black 3-ring binder and organized every piece of evidence with colored tabs and an index. I filed 13 separate countercharges against him, including 2 felony counts for perjury and filing false police reports. I secured my own temporary restraining order. Then, I drafted a pristine, clinical email containing the screenshots of his conversations with Corrine. I sent one copy to the State Physical Therapy Licensing Board and another directly to the Human Resources Department of the clinic where he worked. The air in the mediation room weeks later was thick with the sterile scent of floor wax and impending doom. Vance sat across the mahogany table in a sharp suit, wearing a mask of serene, victimized confidence. His attorney, a brash man with a loud tie, began posturing about the severity of my alleged actions. My lawyer didn't say a word. She simply slid the black binder across the table, followed by a small Bluetooth speaker. She pressed play. The room filled with Vance's unhinged, screaming voice. The audio captured the shattering of the vase, my breathless pleas for him to let go of my neck, and his explicit, venomous threats. I watched the color drain from his lawyer's face. The brashness evaporated into a horrifying realization that his client had marched him into a legal slaughterhouse. The negotiation lasted less than 20 minutes. In exchange for mutual dismissals of the criminal charges, saving my career, Vance was forced to write a check for my entire legal bill, totaling $10,500 right there on the spot. He signed the paper with a trembling hand, his eyes fixed firmly on the polished wood of the table. But the gears of his destruction were already turning elsewhere. Within a week, the medical board launched a full investigation. The clinic, terrified of liability regarding the patient affair, terminated him immediately. His license was suspended indefinitely pending a disciplinary hearing. Yet I wasn't finished. The criminal charges were dropped, but the civil courts were wide open. I sued him for $12,500 in property damage, citing the destruction of my apartment, the broken antiquities, and the cost of breaking my lease to move away from him. When the civil judge ruled in my favor, awarding me every single cent, whatever fragile grip Vance had left on his sanity snapped entirely. That night, my phone lit up with a barrage of text messages from an unknown number. They were vitriolic, menacing, and promised violent retribution. It was a fatal error. I took the text straight to the police. Because he had violated the terms of our initial mediation and engaged in documented terroristic threats, the district attorney did not hesitate. Vance was arrested, charged, and convicted. I was granted a permanent 2-year protective order. Today, the man who tried to use the law to strip me of everything I had built has nothing left. He is completely unemployable in his chosen field. His bank accounts are hollowed out by legal fees and civil judgments. He is currently sleeping in his childhood bedroom at his mother's house, subject to random check-ins by a severely overworked probation officer. The greatest trick a manipulator will ever pull is convincing you that fighting back is beneath you. They rely on your silence. They bank on your desire to just walk away and heal in the shadows. But true healing sometimes requires burning the false narrative to the ground so the truth can stand in the ashes. Never let a monster rewrite your history. Keep your records, stand your ground, and let the truth be the ultimate judge. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to fight back against someone who tried to destroy your reality, hit the like button and subscribe. Share your own survival stories in the comments below, and remember, your voice is the one weapon they can never disarm.